Every transaction has a price. Ilara's price was a man's debt of £22,000. It was a contract in which her name was never written. And it was the act of waiting, for a single question no one had asked in 19 years. What do you want? The contract lay on the table, the ink not yet dry. When Lord Harwick set down the pen, with that small, trembling motion, the signature of a man in debt, Ilara was looking out the window. No one was looking at Ilara. This was not new. 19 years ago, it had been the same. Another table, another contract. Back then, they hadn't looked because she was a baby, and what a baby felt did not matter. Now they did not look because she was £22,000. When a number grows large enough, people look at the number, not the person. The contract shall become valid upon the representative acting on behalf of the Voss family obtaining the signature. She had heard that sentence through the crack of a door, 3 days ago. She had been waiting ever since. Waiting for what, she did not fully know, for an escape, or for a miracle. The door opened, and a man stepped out. He was large. That was the first impression, not merely his height or the breadth of his shoulders, but the effect of the way he entered the room. The lawyer stepped aside. Lord Harwick straightened. The room, in some unspoken way, made space for him. Duke Aldrich Voss. Owner of 3 counties in the north. A man returned from war, having left something behind there, no one knew what, but the absence of it showed upon his face. Sharp lines, deep-set marks. Not fatigue, weight. The weight of something carried. His eyes were dark gray, almost black. And they moved across the room, over the lawyer, over Harwick, over the table, until they reached Ilara, standing in the corner. They stopped. Ilara did not look away. She had learned that years ago, that looking away made people think you felt guilty, and someone who felt guilty was vulnerable. Ilara had no right to be vulnerable. The vulnerable were crushed. The Duke looked for a second. 2 seconds. Then he turned to the lawyer. Where is the contract? His voice was not what she had expected. Not loud, not commanding, simply asking. And yet the room remained silent. Some voices did not need to rise to impose themselves. The lawyer handed over the paper. The Duke took it, began to read. Ilara waited. His eyes caught on a line. Ilara could not see exactly where, but she saw the pause. His finger tightened slightly on the page. Then he lifted his head. He looked at Ilara. Are you Ilara? The question was plain. Formal. It might even have been called cold. But there was something in it, not the tone of someone asking out of obligation, but of someone who genuinely wanted to know. Yes, said Ilara. A single word. If Lord Harwick had been at her side, he would have corrected it to, yes, sir. But Lord Harwick was not on her side, and Ilara was tired of carrying the extra words others had placed in her mouth for 19 years. The Duke paused for a moment. Then he returned to the paper. There is no birth date here. It is not required in the contract, sir, the lawyer said quickly. The legal age limits. I did not ask you. The Duke was still looking at the paper. I asked her. Something in Ilara tightened. What did it feel like, to realize the question was being directed at you, not indirectly, but directly? It was a small thing. Very small. But in 19 years, very few things had ever been said to her at all. 19, she said. The room fell silent. A different kind of silence, not the absence of speech, but the presence of change. The Duke set the paper down slowly. Turned to Lord Harwick. His voice was low, but the air itself seemed altered by it. 19. He repeated it. Not a question. Something being set into place. "This child," said the Duke. Lord Harwick paled. "She is of legal age, sir, entirely. The courts." "I am not speaking of the law." The Duke's eyes fixed on Harwick, and for the first time Elara understood why men feared him. There was no anger in his voice. There was something more dangerous than anger, certainty. "I am asking whether you have made a 19-year-old child part of an agreement. The matter is somewhat more complex, sir, the debt, the family." "I know about the debt." The Duke turned back to the table. He picked up the contract. Elara watched, wondering if he would tear it, but he did not. He handed it to his lawyer. "Change it." "Sir." "Change the terms. Now." The lawyer took the paper as if it might vanish. Lord Harwick's hand trembled. Elara remained in her corner. No signal had been given for her to leave, none for her to step forward. Exactly in between, as always. The Duke turned. This time he looked at Elara, not after the lawyer, not after the contract. Directly. And very few people in Elara's life had ever looked at her like that, not to see something, but to see her. "Do you want to come?" The question hung in the air. Elara heard it. Clearly, the words were distinct, the meaning plain. But it took a second, just a second, because in 19 years no one had ever asked her that, and when the mind tries to process something it has never heard before, it falters. "Do you want?" To want. A choice. A voice. A will. "I don't know you," said Elara. "No. I don't know where you would take me." "You do, the north. 2 days' journey." "Why?" The Duke's jaw tightened slightly. For the first time, he seemed to weigh something, how much he would say. "To a place where I can keep you safe." That is not an answer. Lord Harwick cleared his throat. "Elara, that will be enough." "No," said the Duke, without even looking at him. "It is the right question. It deserves an answer." The room waited. The Duke looked at Elara. Elara looked at the Duke. "As far as I know you," he said at last, "you ask the questions no one else does. That is useful to me. We can discuss the details on the road." Elara thought. She had spent 17 years in Harwick's house. What would happen if she stayed? Another contract. Another corner of another room. Perhaps another table, another signature, this time with her name written in. "I have something," she said. "A box." The Duke's expression did not change. "We will take it. Only one box." "I know." He did not know. But when he said it, his voice did not diminish it, it acknowledged it. That this was all she had. And did not make that all small. Elara took a step. Before boarding the carriage, as she passed through the doorway, she paused for a moment. For 19 years she had been inside this house. It had never felt like home, but it had been familiar, the creak of the stairs, the smell of onions from the kitchen, the way Harwick slammed the door to the left of the hall when he was angry. The outside was not familiar. But the inside had never been safe. The Duke did not look at her as he mounted his horse. He did not watch her, did not control her, his back was turned, his gaze fixed somewhere distant. And for the first time, Elara realized something. This man was not expecting her to follow. He was waiting. The difference was everything. Elara held her box close. She climbed into the carriage. The door closed. The journey to the north would take 2 days. Later, when Elara thought back on what she had learned of Duke Aldrich Voss in those 2 days, she would realize this: he never spoke more than necessary. But he never said anything unnecessary either. It was unlike anyone she had ever known. The north was not what Elara had imagined. Wider. quieter. And somehow, this was difficult to put into words, more honest. The fields of the south had been arranged, disciplined. Trees placed deliberately, hedges drawn into lines, nature shaped into something like a garden. Here, the hills existed because they existed. The forest grew not because someone had planted it, but because it had taken root. The stones were uneven, the roads crooked, and the horizon arrived without asking permission. Elara sat in the carriage, looking out the window. For 2 days, the Duke had not entered the carriage. He rode on horseback, ahead, sometimes beside, once behind. He had not spoken. Elara had not spoken either. And in a strange way, these had been the most comfortable 2 days of her life. When no one is watching you within silence, silence begins to breathe. When the manor appeared on the horizon, Elara leaned forward. Grey stone. 4 towers. Windows long and narrow, as if designed not to admit light, but to watch what lay outside. There was no garden, not the kind Harwick had possessed. There was something harsher, long grass, open land, and far in the distance, the edge of a forest. Voss Manor. It was large. Cold. And for some reason, though it took Elara a moment to admit it to herself, it did not frighten her at first glance. Harwick's house had been small, but every room had been a trap. This place was large. In large places, sometimes, it was possible to disappear. And sometimes, disappearing was the safest thing of all. The housekeeper was waiting at the door. In her 50s, dressed in black, posture straight. Her face was neutral, neither warm nor cold. It was a professional face. Over the years, it had seen things and trained itself not to see them. "Miss Elara," she said. "I am Mrs. Aldrin. Your room is ready." Elara paused. Mississippi. No one had ever addressed her like that before. In Harwick's house, she had been simply Elara, just a name, unadorned. Even the servants sometimes left it that way. A name without a title made a person lighter, as if it hovered in the air with nothing to anchor it. To be called Miss was to be given a place. Elara said nothing. But something inside her, a small, fragile thing, shifted. The room was larger than she had expected. The window was wide and faced east. Morning light would enter, Elara understood that from the angle. The bed was 4-posted, draped in deep burgundy. The fireplace was lit, the warmth could be felt as soon as one entered. A writing desk stood by the window. The bookcase was not full, but it was not empty either. And it was hers. This room belonged only to Elara. In Harwick's house, she had not had a room of her own. Technically, a space had been assigned to her, but it had also been the ironing room. A place where laundry hung, soap boxes were stacked, where in winter a brazier was carried in. Elara had slept there for 10 years, grown used to the smell of washed linen. Here, there was no smell of laundry. There was lavender, faint. And wood smoke. And stone, the honest, dry scent of an old structure. Elara set her box on the floor. She went to the window. Looked outside. In the distance, near the edge of the forest, she saw the Duke riding his horse into the dark, alone, slow. Where is he going? She thought. Then, that is not my concern. But she did not leave the window. Dinner was not held in the great hall. Mrs. Aldrin led her to a smaller room, beside the library, a table set for 2. The Duke was already there, papers before him. When Elara entered, he did not lift his head. Elara sat. The meal was brought. Soup, bread, grilled meat. Simple. Well prepared. Elara noticed there was no silver, porcelain plates, plain cutlery, a white napkin. Not display, but use. The Duke set the papers aside. took his spoon. Silence. Elara began to eat. The soup was good, beef stock, fresh herbs. At Harwick's table, the soup had always been watered down. The cook would add water to stretch the quantity, and no one said anything, because saying something required power. Is the room suitable? The Duke had not quite asked, he had let the question rest in the air. It was not obligatory courtesy, but it was not unnecessary either. Yes, said Elara. Silence. Have you ever been to the north before? No. You may find it harsh. Especially in winter. Harwick's house was cold as well. The Duke's brow lifted slightly. There was no heating? There was. It simply did not reach everywhere. The Duke said nothing. But something passed across his face, very briefly, very faintly. Elara could not name it. Not anger exactly. Something deeper. The look of someone making note of something. After dinner, the Duke stood. I expect you in the study tomorrow. 10 o'clock. Elara waited. I will explain why you are here, he said. Completely. I will hide nothing. Elara studied him. Why? Because you already understand. The Duke turned, walking toward the door. Not telling you what you already understand would be an insult. The door closed. Elara remained at the table, the tea cooling. Not telling you what you already understand would be an insult. 19 years. For 19 years, people had assumed she would not understand, or had not cared whether she did. The difference had never mattered to Elara. The result was the same. This man saw a difference. It did not reassure her. On the contrary, it made her more cautious. People who read you correctly were more dangerous than those who read you wrong. At 10 o'clock, she knocked on the study door. Come in. The room was large, but not complicated. Books lined all four walls. A broad oak desk stood in the center, covered in stacks of papers, not chaotic, but arranged as if each stack followed its own logic. The fireplace burned. The Duke stood by the window, looking out. Elara entered, closed the door. Waited. The Duke turned. Sit. Elara sat, across from the desk. The Duke remained standing. A long moment passed. Then he began. Lord Harwick's debt is not real. Elara waited. That is, the debt exists. But not the way it was created. The Duke leaned against the table, arms crossed. Someone engineered it. Harwick, and 14 families like him. Within a specific period, through a specific intermediary. Who? I do not yet know. There is a name, but behind that name, others. Someone in Parliament. Possibly more than one. Elara listened. Waited. The Duke continued. Do you remember the people who came to Harwick's house? Over the past 2 years. Yes. All of them? Elara thought. The important ones. The Duke's eyes changed, the look of someone recognizing something. Which ones were important? The ones who came after the first half of the evening. Through the back door. Harwick would sometimes drink at dinner, then shut himself in the study. Elara paused. I would pass by sometimes. The library is that way. What did you hear? Names. Dates. Once, a number, £100,000. Another time, a city. Portsmouth. The Duke straightened. Walked slowly around the desk. Looked at her. Have you told anyone this? Who would have asked? Silence. The Duke stopped. You are right. Then, I need to ask you something. Directly. Ask. If you share everything you remember with me, names, dates, what you heard, what you saw, that information is very valuable to me. It may allow me to close this case. Elara waited. In return, I offer you safety. You may remain in this house, your needs will be met, no one will find you. The silence lengthened. Elara watched the Duke. The Duke watched Elara. Are you using me as a witness? Said Elara. A second passed before the Duke answered. Yes. At least you are honest. I do not have time to lie to you. Elara stood. Walked to the window, the place where the Duke had stood moments ago. Looked outside. The forest in the distance, the open land nearby. The cold sun over the stone. Very well, she said. I will listen. The Duke said nothing. Elara turned. Did you expect me to refuse? Yes, said the Duke. And in his voice, barely, but present, was something. Not surprise. The recognition of something. Because I could have refused, said Elara. That matters. I want you to understand that. The Duke held her gaze. For a long moment. I do. Good. Days passed. Each morning, Elara went to the study. She told him everything she remembered, names, faces, dates, fragments of conversations. The Duke listened, took notes, asked questions from time to time. His questions were precise but not harsh. He was not trying to misunderstand her, he was trying to understand her correctly. The difference was considerable. The afternoons were free. That, too, was new. In Harwick's house, free time had been a concept without reality, every moment something to be done, something to be prepared, somewhere to be. Here, the door closed in the afternoon, and Elara did not know what to do. On the first day, she sat by the window. On the second, she entered the library. On the third, she took a book. The library was large and well kept. Elara moved slowly between the shelves. Her fingers brushed the spines, leather-bound volumes, some old, some new. History, philosophy, law. In one corner, geography. In another, medical texts. And on one shelf, in an unexpected place, novels. Elara stopped. There had been no novels in Harwick's house. He considered them a waste of time. Whenever Elara managed to access books, once or twice a year, at a stall in the town market, she would try to memorize the pages, because they had to be returned, or were lost, or taken away by someone else. Here, there was an entire shelf of them. Elara pulled one free. Old, heavy, yellowed pages. A story about an island. She opened it, someone had written in the margins, in a neat hand. Small, careful letters. The author is wrong here, the ships could not have advanced in this direction without wind. Elara laughed. It was unexpected. Hearing her own voice, she stopped, tried to remember the last time she had laughed. She could not. I am not certain you will like that one. Elara turned. The Duke stood in the doorway. What time was it? The afternoon had begun, but the light had changed, hours had passed, and Elara had not noticed. Is the handwriting yours? She asked, without offering the book. The Duke stepped inside. Saw the book, something passed across his face. Small, quick. No. My mother's. Elara looked at the book. Then at him. I am sorry, I did not know. No, the Duke did not raise his voice, but he stopped her, firm, not harsh. You may read it. That is why it is there. Elara held the book. Was she right about the ships? The Duke paused. Then, unexpected, brief, real, he laughed. Yes. She was entirely right. That evening, they spoke over dinner. For the first time, they truly spoke, not an investigation, not an interrogation. Elara asked about the book with his mother's annotations. The Duke answered, briefly at first, then at length. His mother had read extensively. Half the library had been hers. As for navigation, she had been particularly exacting. She could not tolerate an error. Why navigation? My father was a sailor. In the Navy. The Duke turned his glass in his hand. When he died, my mother began reading his books. His world, so she could understand it. Elara said nothing. Then she began leaving her own notes. Marking the mistakes. There was something in the Duke's voice, not sorrow. Something gentler. If he were here, he would scold me for this, she used to say. Did she love you? The question slipped out. Elara had not intended to ask it, but it came. She stopped. The Duke looked at her. Yes, he said. Yes, she did. Silence. Where is she now? She passed away. While I was at war. I am sorry. So am I. Short. Simple. But something remained in the room after those words, not a weight, but a reality. Elara looked at him. The hardest man in the north. A man who made Parliament uneasy, whose name families spoke in lowered voices. And now he sat with a glass in his hand, preserving his mother's notes in old books. I will ask something, said Elara. Tell me if it is unwelcome. The Duke waited. What did you lose in the war? The room fell silent. The Duke set his glass down. Looked at the table. A long moment passed. Elara considered stepping back, offering an apology. Then he spoke. A person, he said. Someone wrongly accused. I failed to reach them in time. He paused. Since then, this is what I do. Investigation. Evidence. Justice. For revenge? I thought so at first. The Duke lifted his head. It is not. Even after revenge closes, I cannot stop. When the answer remains the same, it means the question has changed. Elara thought. Perhaps it is not about revenge, but about meaning. The Duke looked at her. To fail to save someone, Elara said slowly, either breaks a person or turns them into something. It has turned you into something. The Duke said nothing for a long time. Then, have you ever been broken? Elara considered. Honestly, not the easy answer, the real one. To be broken, I would have needed something to hold on to, she said. I never did. Something passed across the Duke's face. This time, Elara could name it. Recognition. Not of something foreign, but of something the same, seen in another face. That night, Elara returned to her room. She held the book his mother had annotated. The Duke had given it to her at the door. Read it, he had said. Leave your own notes in the margins. We will discuss them. Elara lay back on the bed. Opened the book. Moonlight entered through the window. The forest was dark, but tonight it seemed less unfamiliar. On the margin of a page was a small note, in the same hand as his mother's, but written in different ink, more recent. My mother saw an error here. I see it as well. But the story is still beautiful. Elara traced the line with her finger. I see it as well. A child writing to a mother. Years ago, perhaps when the Duke was still young, perhaps before or after her death. A communication that crossed space, crossed time. Elara closed her eyes. For the first time, truly the first time, she felt, not merely inside the house, but inside this room, inside this bed, safe. Safe. The word felt strange. Unfamiliar. But it did not leave. Danger does not always arrive with a foreign face. Sometimes it comes in a familiar envelope. Fine paper, a proper seal, handwriting full of courtesy. Elara had learned this. In Harwick's house, important visitors did not always arrive at the door, but through letters of invitation. And when the letters came, the air would change. Harwick's shoulders would tense, his voice would sharpen, his eyes would begin calculating something. A letter came here as well. On the 15th day. When Elara entered the study that morning, the Duke was not at the desk. The papers were scattered. This was not like him. Every stack had its place, every document its order. This morning, something had shifted. Elara waited. 10 minutes. 15. When the Duke entered, his face was closed, not neutral, but actively closed. As if something inside was being held back under pressure. "Sit," he said. She sat. The Duke took an envelope, placed it on the table. He did not push it toward her, just left it there. "This arrived this morning. From London." Elara looked at the envelope. The seal was broken. The paper inside had been read, refold. "May I?" "That is why it is here." Elara opened it. The handwriting was precise, excessively so. Not the care of someone writing carefully, but the natural hand of someone who always wrote like this. "Esteemed Voss, we hear you are hosting a guest. One from Harwick. We trust your hospitality will not extend to the exchange of information. Some memories are safer when they remain unremembered. We advise you to keep this in mind." There was no signature. Elara set the paper down. Silence. "They know how long I have been here," she said. "Yes." "Did Harwick tell them?" "Harwick does not know who they are. But someone was watching, either him, or the road." The Duke moved to the window. "I expected this. Just not this soon." Elara thought. "What do they want? To silence you? Or to stop me? It is the same thing. Did they begin with me, or are they targeting you?" The Duke turned. Looked at her. "Good question. You know the answer." "They used you," said the Duke. "To reach me. If they can reclaim you, or silence you, they gain leverage." Elara said nothing. Looked at the paper. At the careful handwriting. Some memories are safer when they remain unremembered. "They are threatening me," she said. Not a question. "Yes. I have been threatened before." The Duke waited. "Harwick's house. Within the family. Not large threats, small, daily ones. It will be this way, or it will be that way. Sometimes people do not even use words. A glance is enough." She paused. "This letter is larger. But the principle is the same. If you are afraid, you stay silent." "Are you afraid?" Elara thought. Honestly. "Yes," she said. But fear is not an answer. That afternoon, the Duke did not call her to the study. Elara sat in the library, the book open before her, the one with his mother's notes and his, but she was not reading. She was thinking. What was the logic of the threat? Someone was watching them, meaning they considered the information dangerous. If information is considered dangerous, it is likely true. Portsmouth. £100,000. Names arriving in the dark. Elara searched her memory. Systematic. Calm. Harwick study. The door slightly ajar. Which night had it been? November? December? The fire had been lit, so it was cold. 2 men. Harwick and another. The other had stood while speaking. Elara had heard not his voice, but his footsteps. Long strides. Hard shoes. A name. Pemberton. Elara froze. Pemberton. She had not mentioned it before, had not told the Duke. Why not? Because she had not been certain? Because it had been too brief, too indistinct? But now the letter had come. And the letter had come because someone was afraid. Pemberton. Elara stood. The Duke was in the study. The door was closed. She knocked. Come in. He stood before a map, the southern coast of England, marked around Portsmouth. Pemberton, said Elara. The Duke turned. Slowly. What? November, or December? Harwick study. The door was open, the cook had passed, had not shut it fully. Elara stepped closer, looking at the map. 2 men speaking. One was Harwick. I did not know the other's voice, but I heard his name. Harwick addressed him once. Pemberton. The Duke did not move. You did not mention this before. I was not certain. I heard it once. It was unclear. She paused. But the letter came. Someone is afraid. Someone who is afraid has something to lose. The Duke turned back to the map. His finger rested on a point north of Portsmouth, a small town. Reginald Pemberton, he said. His voice was steady, but something in it tightened. A member of a parliamentary subcommittee. Maritime trade. Do you know him? I know the name. The Duke moved to the desk, opened a file. I could not establish a direct connection. Everything pointed to Portsmouth, but there was no name there. Now there is. The Duke looked at the file. Then at Elara. Is that enough? Said Elara. A name, a night, an uncertain conversation? Not alone. But with the other evidence, records in Portsmouth, debt transfers, dates, it forms a structure. He closed the file. This was the missing piece. Silence. Elara watched him. There was something on his face, not relief, but alignment. Not a man who had found the final piece of a puzzle, but one who had finally found the trail he had been searching for. When does this end? Said Elara. The Duke looked up. What? The investigation. You have Pemberton, or are close. What happens next? The Duke paused. I present the evidence. To Parliament. To the right people. And then? He is tried. Pemberton, and those behind him. What about Harwick? Something shifted on the Duke's face. Small, but Elara saw it. Harwick is a victim. Manipulated. He will not be tried, but the debt will remain, for some time. So he is still bound. For a time, yes. Elara walked to the window. Looked out. The forest, distant and calm. And me, she said. The question hung in the air. The Duke did not answer immediately. And that delay, to Elara, often said more than an answer. You will be safe, he said at last. That is not an answer. I know. Where will I go? I cannot return to Harwick. Not only is it no longer my house, it is dangerous. I have nowhere else. The Duke turned to the desk. Began writing, quickly, not careless, but deliberate. Elara waited. He set the pen down. You may remain here, he said. For as long as you wish. Elara turned. Why? Because you are safe here. That is a practical answer. It is not what I asked. I know. Then? A long silence. Because, said the Duke slowly, this house has been empty for 10 years. Technically occupied, but empty. A person fills a house, not only by living in it, but by how they look at it. By what they ask of it. He paused. You ask. About this room, these books, this view. No one has asked. Elara said nothing. If that is not sufficient, the Duke added, his voice steady, grounded, say so. We will find another reason. It is sufficient, said Elara. Silence. It is sufficient, she repeated, more quietly. 3 days later, the second letter arrived. This time, there was no envelope. A folded sheet of paper had been left at the door, early in the morning, unseen by anyone. Mrs. Aldrin had found it and brought it in. Elara read it together with the Duke. Final warning. The girl is to be returned to London. Otherwise, it will not be the investigation, but the investigator, that becomes the subject. The paper was too thick to tremble, but Elara's hand did. She felt it, a small, involuntary tremor. She concealed it. Set the paper down. The Duke picked it up. Read it. Once. Then slowly folded it and slipped it into his coat pocket. I will not send you to London, he said. I know. You know? Yes. Elara looked at him. Because it is dangerous for you as well. And because it is not just. Is the second reason more important to you? Elara considered. They are separate reasons. But yes, the second matters more to me. The Duke paused for a moment. Then, there is something I must discuss with you. Go on. The Duke turned, walked to the window. His back was to her. This was unusual, he usually spoke openly, face visible. Turning his back meant something was difficult to say. Elara waited. To expose Pemberton, I must present the evidence publicly. Not within Parliament, outside it. Not to the right people, to everyone. The Duke turned back. To do that, I have to lose you. Elara did not understand, for a second. Then she did. Testimony, she said. Yes. Before the public. Yes. And that would make you visible to everyone. Your origins, Harwick, how you came here. Everything. The Duke's voice was steady, but heavy. You know how society uses such information. Elara did know. To be marked. Permanently named. The girl from Harwick. The purchased girl. The illegitimate one. How many people, she asked. Enough. How much is enough? Enough that it cannot be taken back. The silence stretched. Elara moved to the window, not beside him, but to the one opposite. The same view, a different angle. The forest still there. The stones still cold. The sun still low, with that weary, determined slant of winter light. Is this my choice? She asked. Yes. You will not force me? No. There is no other way? The Duke was silent for a second. Perhaps. But it would take longer. And in that time, Pemberton would vanish, leave the country, bury the evidence. You would never find him again. Justice would be delayed. Yes. Harwick's debt would remain. For a time, yes. Elara thought. For a long time. She did not rush, and the Duke did not hurry her. The room was quiet. The fire burned. And you, she said. If this testimony happens, they threatened you. The investigator becomes the subject. I know. Are you not afraid? The Duke looked at her. I am. Then why do it? A long silence. Then the Duke spoke, slowly, carefully. Not choosing words, but accepting that they were already there and simply needed to be spoken. Because once, I stopped. Years ago, I told you. A person was wrongly accused, and I did not reach them in time. That moment closed something inside me. He paused. But now, doors are opening. And I have learned to stand before closed doors, but I have not learned to walk away from open ones. Elara looked at him. Is this door open? You opened it, said the Duke. With the name Pemberton. That night, Elara could not sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The fire had died, the room had grown cold, but she did not rise. The cold sometimes helped thinking. When the body was occupied, the mind sharpened. Testimony. To be seen by everyone. For 19 years, no one had seen her. Now everyone would. And what they would see, illegitimate, from Harwick, sold, unwanted. But also, speaking. Standing. Declaring. Elara closed her eyes. Some memories are safer when they remain unremembered. That was what the letter had said. A threat, but also something else within it. There was power in memory. That was why they wanted silence. What is silenced because it is dangerous. Her memories were dangerous. That did not diminish her. It made her something. Morning came. Elara rose. The Duke was in the study, early, as always. She knocked. Come in. She entered. He looked at her. Saw her face, she had not slept, but she had decided. I will do it, said Elara. The Duke waited. But I have one condition. Name it. Elara stepped forward, sat across from the desk. I will write my own statement. Not you. Not your lawyer. Me. The Duke looked at her. Why? Because this is my life. My memories. My voice. She paused. If I am to be visible, truly visible, then it will be in my own words. Silence. Then the Duke, unexpected, direct, without retreat. Agreed. Elara had expected something more, a limitation, a correction. It did not come. That easily, she said. That correctly, said the Duke. There is a difference. That day, Elara sat at the desk. Took paper. Took a pen. And for the first time in 19 years, she began to write something she wanted someone to see. It was not only testimony. It was an account, a reckoning, not in silence, but in words. How a child could be transferred. How a name could be removed from a contract. How the mark of illegitimacy could shape a life. And how one could stand. As she wrote, she realized, her hand was not trembling. Late that evening, the Duke knocked. May I come in? Come. Elara was still at the desk. Pages lay before her, several already filled. The Duke looked, but did not read. Dinner has grown cold, he said. Mrs. Aldrin is concerned. I will come shortly. He did not leave. He remained by the door, inside, but not settled into the room. Elara. When he said her name, only her name, she set the pen down. Looked at him. I wanted to thank you, said the Duke. For what? For the name Pemberton. Not for staying after the letter, for remembering it. For saying it. He paused. It was not easy. No, said Elara. It was not. I know. Silence. Thank you as well, said Elara. For what? For what you asked on the 15th day. The Duke tried to recall. What did I ask? You asked if I had ever been broken. Elara picked up the pen, set it down again. No one had asked before. The Duke said nothing. But he remained, did not leave, did not speak. Simply stayed. And sometimes, that carried more than anything spoken. London announced itself even in winter. Smoke, the smell of horses, wet stone. When Elara stepped down from the carriage, her feet touched the pavement and she paused. She felt as though she had been taken from the silence of the north and placed into the noise of the city. Everything was closer here. People, sounds, eyes. The crowd closed around you without leaving space. The Duke stood beside her. He was not looking at her, he looked ahead, but Elara felt it. When someone stays near without letting you go, it runs deeper than looking. Are you ready? Said the Duke. No, said Elara. But that answer will not change. The Duke looked at her. Something passed across his face, quick, faint. Then let us go. The hall was large. Elara had expected that, but still she paused for a second upon entering. High ceiling, long tables, rows of chairs opposite. People were there, lawyers, journalists, 2 members of parliament. Grey light filtered through the windows. And in the corner, Reginald Pemberton. Elara had never seen him before. But she recognized him. She could not have said how, perhaps something in the way he held himself. He was not sitting comfortably, though he tried to appear so. The difference between the two was something a person who had spent years in other people's rooms could read. Pemberton looked at Elara. His eyes assessed, quick, cold. Then turned away. It was not quite contempt. Something more dangerous, indifference. I do not take you seriously. What I do not take seriously cannot threaten me. Elara felt something tighten within her. Not anger, clarity. Something sharpening. The Duke did not lead her forward. He seated her to the side, near the lawyer, but visible. Stand when I call you, he had said. Do not rush. Feel the room first. Elara sat. Waited. The lawyer began to speak. Technical, dry. Debt transfers, dates, records from Portsmouth. Numbers. Names. Some of it Elara knew, from the days in the study. Some she heard for the first time. Pemberton objected once, his voice controlled, secure. His lawyer spoke as well. Words moved through the air, overlapping, losing meaning between layers. Then the Duke stood. He spoke briefly. Very briefly, but every sentence settled somewhere. The evidence is sufficient. But evidence alone does not explain how something functions. For that, you need a person. Someone living. He turned. Looked at Elara. Elara. Elara stood. The room's eyes turned toward her, not all at once, but in waves. First those nearby, then the middle rows, then the back. She walked. Her footsteps were audible. There was no other sound, only the faint creak of the floorboards beneath her. She came to the front. Stopped. She held the pages in her hand, the ones she had written. But for a moment, she did not look at them. She looked at the room. Then at Pemberton. He still appeared indifferent. But his eyes were different. Something in them had shifted. Something calculating. Good, Elara thought. Calculate. She glanced at the paper. Then set it aside. She had memorized it, not word for word, but its core. And when you knew the core, the words followed. She began. My name is Elara. I have no surname, I never have. That alone explains how certain things function in this country. 19 years ago, I was adopted. A contract was signed. My name did not appear in that contract, only Ward. A category. A line item. Growing up, I learned this: things without names do not have rights. When you enter a room, you are not seen. When people speak, you are not heard. When agreements are made, no one asks you. But you hear. You see. You remember. She paused. Looked across the room. It was November. Or December, I cannot say with certainty, but it was cold, the fire was lit. The door to Lord Harwick's study was ajar. I was passing. It leads to the library. Two men were speaking. Harwick, and another. £100,000. Portsmouth. Pemberton. The room stilled. Elara did not look at Pemberton. She looked at the space before her, no one, and everyone. I did not tell this name to anyone. Because no one asked. When we are asked, we speak; when we are not, we remain silent. Silence is not a choice, it is a habit. And habits are taught. I was taught. In small, daily, invisible ways. You are not important. Your name is unnecessary. Your mind, your memory, your observations, none of these hold value. Until they do. Now she looked at Pemberton. Directly. You sent a letter to silence me. Some memories are safer when they remain unremembered, you wrote. You were right, my memories were dangerous. But you were wrong about why. They were dangerous because they were true. And now I am here. Silence. Then a sound, from the back row, low but clear. A journalist's pen touching paper. Then another. Then whispers, controlled, but begun. Pemberton's lawyer spoke. Pemberton's face hardened. The lawyer spoke louder. This woman's credibility. This woman's name is Elara, said the Duke. His voice was low. But the room heard. All of it. And her credibility is established by the fact that every date, every name, every figure she has given aligns with documented evidence. If you wish to object, object to the facts. Not the person. Pemberton's lawyer sat. Elara turned forward. She picked up her pages. Straightened them. Took a step, ready to leave. Then stopped. There was something else she wanted to say. She had not planned it, but it rose within her, and she no longer had a reason to suppress what rose. One last thing, she said. The room waited. In this country, a girl can be written into a contract as Ward. Her name is unnecessary. Her birth date is unnecessary. No one asks where she goes. This is not an error. This is a system. Systems can change. But only when they are seen. I saw it. Now you have seen it. If that is enough, then it is enough. She turned back. Sat down. The room held silence, complete, absolute, for several seconds. Then someone began speaking, proceedings resumed, papers shifted, lawyers murmured. But those few seconds had been real. Elara felt it. Outside, the air was cold. London in winter, damp, grey, settled into the stone. Elara paused at the doorway. Drew a deep breath into her lungs. The Duke came to stand beside her. He did not speak. Elara waited, for a comment, an assessment, a well done. It did not come. Instead, the Duke asked. Are you cold? Elara laughed, brief, unexpected. Yes. The carriage is near. They walked. Stone pavement, the sound of horses, a bell somewhere in the distance. Elara felt her steps, steady, her own. When she had left Harwick's house, she had not felt this steady. As she climbed into the carriage, the Duke held the door. Elara paused. Turned. What will happen to Pemberton? He will be tried, said the Duke. The evidence is no longer contained, it is public. The journalists were present. It cannot be undone. And Harwick? The debt will be erased. It will take time, but it will be erased. Elara thought. And what has changed for me? The Duke looked at her. Everything. In practical terms. In practical terms, said the Duke, your name now appears in an official record. In a formal document. Not as a category, as a person. Elara took that sentence. Placed it somewhere within herself. That is a small thing, she said. Yes, said the Duke. And it is not. The journey back north took 2 days. This time, the Duke rode in the carriage. They sat opposite one another. Elara looked out the window as the city gave way to fields, the fields to hills. The Duke held a file, but was not reading it. Elara noticed, but said nothing. After a while. In your mother's book, said Elara, you wrote a note. She sees it too, and still the story is beautiful. The Duke closed the file. Yes. When did you write that? After my mother died. He paused. I took the book, opened the pages. Read her notes. Every one. Something moved in his voice, quiet, heavy. Then I took a pen. I do not fully know why. Perhaps I wanted to speak. To respond. To her? To her. Or perhaps, just to write. To see something remain. Elara looked at him. Did you see it? Yes. The carriage moved on. Outside, the winter sun sank lower behind the hills. I wrote something as well, said Elara. Today. Not on paper. Where? Somewhere inside me. She paused. Sometimes the most important things are written there. No one can read them, but you know they are there. The Duke looked at her. For a long time. What did you write? Elara turned to the window. The hills were close now. The north severity was visible, the stone, the openness, the honesty. That something has not ended, she said. Silence. What? Elara turned back. Met his gaze, directly, without retreat. For 19 years she had withdrawn. Now she had no reason to. I do not know yet, she said. But I know it has not ended. The Duke said nothing. But in his eyes, in those dark gray eyes that weighed and measured everything, something shifted. Like water beneath ice. Invisible, but felt. By the time the manor came into view, it was dark. Lights burned in the windows, Mrs. Aldrin had lit them, as she did each evening. The gray stone looked different in the dim light. Less severe. Less foreign. It looks like a home, Elara thought. Then realized, there was no fear in that thought. The carriage stopped. The Duke stepped down, held the door. Elara followed. Her feet touched the stone. The northern air filled her lungs, cold, clean, nothing like London's mixture. Mrs. Aldrin waited at the door. Welcome back. Dinner is ready. As Elara stepped inside, the Duke came beside her. Elara. She stopped. Turned. He held something small in his hand, an envelope. He extended it. This is for you. It was left in London, before we departed. Elara took it. Her name was written on it, not a surname, only her name. But this time it felt different. Not because she lacked a surname, but because her name alone was enough. What is it? Open it. She did. Inside was an official document, short, simple. But she recognized the seal. Parliament. She read it. Once. Then again. Looked up. This is an account opened in my name, she said. On behalf of Parliament. Yes. Why? Because your testimony became part of an official case. And an official case requires the protection of its witness. The Duke paused. I requested it. But you are not required to accept it. Elara looked at the document. Money. Not small, not excessive. Enough. Enough to build a life. Enough to choose. This frees me, she said. From you as well. Yes. You knew that. Yes. Silence. Elara held the envelope. There were several things within her at once, gratitude, the sense of something closing, and something else. Harder to name. If you wish to leave, said the Duke, his voice steady but weighted, you owe nothing. To anyone. Not even to me. I know. And if you wish to stay. Duke. He stopped. Elara placed the envelope into her pocket. Looked at him. May I ask you something? Ask. On the 15th day, you asked me, do you want to come? You did not have to ask. A contract had already been signed. But you did. The Duke waited. Why? A long silence. He looked toward the window. Outside, the wind moved through the trees, the edge of the forest shifting. Then he turned back. Because, he said, when you bring someone somewhere, the way you bring them matters as much as where you bring them. Only that? A moment. No, said the Duke. Not only that. Will you tell me? He looked at her. Those dark gray eyes, measuring, weighing, calculating. But now there was no calculation. Only looking. You were standing at the door, he said. Everyone was looking at the contract. You were looking out the window. He paused. At the garden. A dead garden. And on your face, there was nothing. Not anger, not disappointment, not even fear. Just, waiting. As if the air might change. Elara waited. I recognize that face, he said. From my own. Silence. And, he added, quieter, if you recognize someone, you begin to care where they are taken. Elara said nothing. For a long time, she said nothing. From outside came Mrs. Aldrin's voice, dinner was growing cold, and the air as well. It would be best to come in. Elara smiled. Small. Real. I would like to stay, she said. The Duke looked at her. Not out of obligation, she continued. Not because I have no other option. Not because I owe anything. She paused. Because there are novels on a shelf in this house. Because the window looks out onto a forest. Because here, someone calls me by my name. She paused. And because I have no good reason to leave a face I recognize. Something in the Duke's expression, controlled, closed, precise, shifted. A small fracture. But real. All right, he said. That is all? That is all. They spoke over dinner. This time, Mrs. Aldrin sat with them, the Duke had insisted. It was unusual, but everything that evening felt unusual. The fire burned. The food was good. The conversation moved through small things, what the weather might be tomorrow, which book Elara should begin in the library, whether it might be possible to restore a corner of the garden in the spring. Small things. But when small things accumulate, they become a life. Elara had known that in Harwick's house as well, but there, small things carried weight. Here, they were simply small things. After dinner, she went to the library. She took the book with his mother's notes from the shelf. Opened it, to that page, to the short line the Duke had written. Asterisk, I see it too. And still, the story is beautiful, asterisk. She picked up a pen. In the margin, in her own neat hand, she wrote. So do I. She returned the book to the shelf. Left the room. In the corridor, the Duke was passing. He stopped. For a moment, they looked at one another. Good night, said Elara. Good night, said the Duke. Elara went to her room. She sat by the window. Outside, the forest was dark, but the moon had risen, cold, pale, resting on the stone. In the distance, a branch shifted in the wind. Elara watched. Not like someone who had waited for 19 years. Like someone at the beginning of something. 3 months later, Pemberton was tried. The parliamentary record was open. The newspapers wrote, names, dates, Portsmouth. Harwick's debt was erased. The records of 14 families were cleared. Elara's name appeared in the records, not as a category, but as a person. It was a small thing. And it was not. In the north, at the Grey Stone Manor, a corner of the garden was restored in spring. Elara chose which seeds would be planted. The Duke said he did not understand soil. Elara said it could be learned. That summer, new books were added to the library shelves, Elara's selections. In some, notes appeared in the margins. In some, the Duke wrote replies. Some conversations begin in words. Some grow in the margins of books. Both are real. A year later. May. The garden was green. Truly green, the kind Elara could not have imagined when she first saw it. The gray, lifeless ground left by winter frost now shimmered in 6 shades of green. The row of lavender had not yet bloomed, but it would, the gardener had promised, Elara had believed, and now both were waiting. Along the eastern wall, rose bushes stretched. Those had been Elara's choice. Roses, the Duke had asked that first spring, looking over the seed catalogue. Roses, Elara had said. Why? There were roses in Harwick's garden, but no one cared for them. They all withered. She had paused. I want to see roses that are cared for. The Duke had said nothing. But he had closed the catalogue and called the gardener. Now the rose bushes leaned against the wall, budding. Not yet open. But they would. Elara sat at the table. The window overlooking the garden was open, May wind drifted in, lifting the papers slightly. Elara held them with one hand and continued writing with the other. She was writing. It had become a habit now, every morning, before breakfast, an hour. At first, she had not known exactly what she was writing. It was not a journal, not quite a story. It was a record, of what she saw, what she thought, her agreements or objections to what she read. Over time, it had taken shape. Now she had 52 pages. The Duke had not asked whether he could read them. Elara had not said whether he had. But one morning she had found a note on her desk, in his handwriting, a single sentence. Asterisk, the observation on page 17 is correct. Lawyers tend to overlook that asterisk. She still kept that note. Inside a book, as a marker. Around 10, the Duke entered. He came every morning, same hour, same stride. He knocked. Elara said, "Come in." Before going to the study, he would pause a moment, drink something, sometimes ask a question. This morning, he took his coffee to the window. Looked at the garden. "The roses have budded," he said. "I know." I noticed yesterday. They will open this week. The gardener said next week. He is mistaken. The Duke sipped his coffee. In this soil, everything happens a week early. Elara laughed. She did that now, laughed, without remembering when it had begun. Do you argue with the gardener? Always. He knows more. And I am more stubborn. That is the balance. There was an envelope on the table. Elara had seen it earlier. It had been left that morning, not sealed with the Duke's mark, but from outside. She had not opened it. She had waited, though she did not fully know why. The Duke saw it. Said nothing. Elara took it. Opened it. Inside were two papers. The first was official, a parliamentary document. She read it. Once. Then again. This, she said, is a registration of a surname. Yes. In my name. Yes. Elara looked at the paper. In black ink, formal lettering. Elara Voss. Who arranged this? I did. The Duke had not turned from the window. I applied 2 months ago. I did not want to take you anywhere without a surname. Anywhere? The second paper. Elara took the second sheet. It was not official. It was the Duke's handwriting, precise as always, but slower this time, as if each word had been considered. Elara. I will not offer you a contract. Contracts contain terms, and terms assume equality where there is none. Instead, I will say this. A year ago, I asked you, do you want to come? You asked, why? I said, because I recognized a familiar face. That was true. But not complete. The complete truth is this: when you stood at that door, looking at a dead garden, I saw something still waiting. Not something broken. Something not yet begun. This house was full for 10 years, and empty. Now it is not. I will not bind this with terms. I will ask a question. Do you wish to be Elara Voss? Truly. Always. Your answer may be no. You will still have this house, this name, this safety, they are already yours. But if it is yes, I am here as well. Aldrich. Elara held the paper. The wind moved through the room, the lavender stems swayed, the rose buds trembled. Somewhere, a bird called. The room was quiet, save for the soft crackle of the fire. The Duke remained at the window. Had not turned. Perhaps he did not wish to see her face. Perhaps hearing the answer was enough. Perhaps waiting had been learned in 10 years of silence. Elara stood. Walked to him. He turned. She held the paper out, not as if returning it, but as if they held it together. I will ask something first, she said. Ask. In this house, in this life, who will I be? Will I be able to do my own work? Continue writing? Arrange the garden as I wish? In disagreement, will I hear my own voice, not yours? The Duke met her gaze. Yes. Are you certain? I read the 52 pages, he said. 2 months ago. Without your permission. I apologize. He paused. But I could not imagine building a life that would silence those 52 pages. Elara looked at him. For a long moment. A year ago, she could not have read his face. Now she could. And what she read, behind all the control, the distance, the walls built over years, was simple and fragile. Waiting. Only waiting. Yes, said Elara. The Duke said nothing. Yes, she repeated. I want to be Elara Voss. Truly. Always. Outside, the wind passed. A rose leaf broke free, drifted through the window, settled on the floor. The Duke extended his hand. Elara took it. A small thing. A hand. But small things accumulate into a life, and Elara knew that now. And this moment was not small. That week, the roses bloomed. The Duke had been right, not the gardener. 4 days early. Elara woke one morning, looked out the window, and saw them, along the eastern wall, red, pink, cream, shifting lightly in the wind. Roses that were cared for. Elara watched them for a while. Then went downstairs. The Duke was in the kitchen, arguing with Mrs. Aldrin about summer plans. Elara entered. "The roses have opened," she said. "I told you." "Will you tell the gardener?" "Of course I will." Mrs. Aldrin muttered something, likely something neither of them intended to hear. Elara poured coffee. Saturday. The Duke sat as well. Papers were before him, as always. But this morning, he looked not at them, but at Elara. "On page 52, he said, "you left a sentence unfinished." Elara remembered. "I know. Will you finish it?" Elara held her cup. Looked out the window, at the garden, the roses, the distant forest. "Yes," she said. "But without haste." "Good," said the Duke. "The best sentences are not written in haste." That day, Elara returned to her desk. Opened the 52 pages. Looked at the final, unfinished line. She took the pen. And wrote. "For 19 years, no one asked me what I wanted. Then someone did. And everything began with that question. Gardens, margins of books, roses, unhurried sentences, things that are seen. A life is shaped not by great decisions, but by small moments. I learned that late. But I learned it." She set the pen down. Looked out the window. The roses were still there. A girl like this, she grows up in a house, but she is never truly part of it. Always there, yet somehow not there at all. Have any of you ever felt that? Even within a crowded family, that quiet sense of being on the outside. Everyone is talking, but no one really turns to look at you. That's exactly what Elara seems to go through. And as you listen, you can't help but wonder, what does it do to a person to live that long without ever being seen? And then there's the matter of the debt, a life folded into £22,000. It sounds harsh when you think about it, but is that really just something from the past? Even today, don't people end up carrying the consequences of someone else's mistakes, someone else's decisions? Maybe not this openly, but in quieter, less visible ways. Have you ever had to bear the weight of something that wasn't truly yours? That part of Elara's story feels uncomfortably close. And that moment when the Duke walks into the room, there's something strange about it. Because for the first time, someone actually looks at her. Not just looks, but sees. And it makes you think, can a single moment of being truly seen change a person's life? 19 years of being invisible, and then suddenly someone looks at you, asks you a question. Can that really shift something inside? Do you think it can? And that question. Do you want to come? It's hard not to pause when you hear it. It's such a simple question. But no one has ever asked her that before. If someone asked you that, right now, could you answer honestly? Sometimes people go through life without even knowing what they want. Because they were never asked. Or never allowed to think about it. That brief hesitation from Elara, it feels like one of the most real moments in the entire story. Then there's the journey, 2 days with barely a word spoken. And yet, those are the most comfortable 2 days of her life. Isn't that strange? Silence usually makes people uneasy. But here, it does the opposite. No one is watching, no one expects anything. What does that remind you of? Do people sometimes feel more at peace in silence? Or is it not really about silence, but about the absence of pressure? When she arrives in the north, her reaction is just as interesting. The house is large, cold, severe, but it doesn't frighten her. Because for the first time, a place doesn't feel like a trap. That's such a small detail, but it feels very real. Sometimes a small space can suffocate you, and sometimes a vast place can finally let you breathe. Have you ever felt that difference? Not physically, but emotionally? And then, slowly, she begins to build a life. A room, a desk, books, small things. But maybe that's what life really is. Not the big moments, but the small arrangements. Where you wake up, what your window looks out onto, the quiet of not being disturbed. Do those things truly change a person? Or are we always waiting for something bigger? There's also the courtroom scene. When she stands up and speaks, but notice, there's no dramatic outburst. No shouting, no tears. Just words. Her own story, in her own voice. And maybe that's the strongest moment of all. Because for the first time, no one speaks for her. Why do you think it's so powerful when someone tells their own story? Why does simply speaking the truth sometimes feel so heavy? And that line. My name is Elara. I have no surname. What did you feel when you heard that? Because it's not just a statement. It feels like a whole life, condensed into a sentence. You have a name, but no identity. You exist, but you don't belong. That's a heavy thing to carry. And yet, later, she stands there, and everyone listens. Do you see that as a moment of victory? Or just a form of justice that came far too late? Toward the end, the pace slows down. But in a way, it starts to feel more real. The garden, the roses, the books, the writing. The big events are over, but life begins. And maybe that's the most important part. Because most stories end right there. But real life starts there. Which do you think matters more? The moments that break everything apart, or the quiet life that comes after? And what about her relationship with the Duke? What do you think that is? Is it truly love? Or is it two people, both alone in their own ways, learning to understand each other? There's no pressure, no grand declarations. Just something steady, quiet, growing over time. Does that feel more real to you? Or does it feel like something is missing? And finally, the moment she chooses to stay. That might be the most important one. Because now, she doesn't have to. She could leave. But she stays. For the first time, she makes a decision based on what she wants. Do you see that as freedom? Or as belonging? Maybe the most striking thing about this story is this: there are no grand miracles. No one changes overnight. But small things, they add up. And at some point, everything becomes something else entirely. And it makes you wonder, are there small things in your own life that you've been overlooking? Thank you for staying with the story all the way to the end. Be sure to share in the comments which city you're listening from. We truly enjoy reading them. And if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.